Knowinghood journeyed north. Knowinghood journeyed north beyond Darkwada, ascending the hills of Hidden Jutting, where he met Knowing No Saying. Knowinghood said, "I want to ask you something. What should I think of and consider in order to know the course? What should I adopt and serve in order to rest securely in the course? What should I follow? What course should I take as my guide in order to attain the course?" He asked 3 questions, but Knowing No Saying did not answer. It wasn't that he was unwilling to answer. He did not know how to answer. Having received no response, Knowinghood traveled back to the south of Clearwater, ascending the hills of Doubt Silenced, where he met Wild and Twisty. He asked him the same questions. Wild and Twisty said, "This I know. Let me tell you." But just as he was about to speak, he forgot what he was going to say. Still having obtained no answer, Knowinghood returned to the Imperial Palace, where he asked the same questions of the Yellow Emperor. "Only when you think of nothing and consider nothing," said the Yellow Emperor, "will you know the course. Only when you adopt nothing and serve nothing will you rest securely in the course. Only when you follow nothing and take no course as your guide will you attain the course." "Now you and I know this," said Knowinghood, "while the other 2 do not. Who is right?" "Only Knowing No Saying is truly right," said the Yellow Emperor. "Wild and Twisty only seems to be right. As for you and me, we are nowhere near it. For he who knows does not speak, and he who speaks does not know. Hence, the sage practices the teaching of no words. The course cannot be given and virtuosity cannot be received. But humanity can be deliberately forged. Responsibility can do harm. And ritual propriety is just a mutual swindling. Hence, it is said, when the course is lost, there is virtuosity. When virtuosity is lost, there is humanity. When humanity is lost, there is ritual propriety. Ritual propriety is the fruitless flower of the course and the beginning of disorder. And also, to practice the course requires daily diminishment. Diminish again and yet again until you reach non-doing, doing nothing and yet leaving nothing undone. Now you and I have already become beings. Is it not difficult to return to the root? It is easy only for the great man. For life is the follower of death, and death is the beginning of life. Who can discern any fixed order to them? The birth of man is just a convergence of energy. When it converges, he lives. When it scatters, he dies. Since life and death follow each other, what is there to worry about? It is in this way that all things are one. People take what they consider beautiful to be sacred and wonderful and take what they dislike to be odious and rotten. But the odious and rotten transforms into the sacred and wonderful, and the sacred and wonderful transforms into the odious and rotten. Thus do I say, just open yourself into the single energy that is the world. It is for the sake of this that the sage values oneness. Knowinghood said, "I asked Knowing No Saying, and he gave me no response. Not that he wasn't willing to answer, he didn't even know how. I asked Wild and Twisty, and he didn't tell me either, although he was just about to. It wasn't that he decided not to answer, he forgot what he was going to say. Now I have asked you, and you know the answer. Why do you say you are far from it?" The Yellow Emperor said, "The one is truly right because he did not know. The other is a semblance of it because he forgot. But you and I are nowhere near it because we know it." When Wild and Twisty heard about this conversation, he concluded that the Yellow Emperor was a man who truly knew the meaning of words. Heaven and earth possess vast beauties, but they do not speak of them. The 4 seasons have their unconcealed regularities, but they do not discuss them. Each of the 10,000 things makes its own perfect sense, but does not explain it. The sage traces back from the beauties of heaven and earth and thereby reaches through to the sense made by each of the 10,000 things. Thus it is that the consummate person does nothing, the great sage initiates nothing, that is to say, they merely cast their gaze over heaven and earth. For the illumination of their spirits is refined to an utmost subtlety, allowing them to transform along with other things every which way. Things die, are born, go round, go square, and no one knows the root of it. But it is spread out everywhere, and through it the 10,000 things have maintained themselves since ancient times. Even something as vast as the 6 directions never gets beyond it. Even something as small as a hair in autumn depends on it to take form as a physical body. Each thing in the world to the end of its days is forever rising and falling, never remaining as it was. The yin and the yang and the four seasons go through their cycles, each one finding its place in the sequence. Obscure, it is present, but only by being as if absent. Ever gliding away, it shows no fixed form and thereby manifests its mysterious power. All things are nourished by it, but without ever knowing it. This is what is called the root and foundation, and it is with this that our gaze may reach the heavenly. Nyake asked Pai about the Course. Pai said, straighten your body and unify your vision, and the heavenly harmony will arrive. Gather in your understanding, unify your thoughts, and the Spirit will come to reside in you. Virtuosity will then beautify you, and the Course will dwell in you. Just be oblivious to it all, like a newborn calf who seeks no reasons. But before he had even finished speaking, Nyake had fallen asleep. Pai was delighted and strolled away singing, body like withered bones, mind like dead ashes. His real understanding is genuine, not maintaining itself by means of precedents and purposes. Dim and obscure, free of intentions, unconsultable, what sort of man is he? Shun asked Chung, can the Course be attained and possessed? Chung said, even your body is not your own possession. How could you attain the Course? Shun said, if my body is not my own possession, whose is it? Chung said, it is just a form lent by heaven and earth. Life is not your own possession, it is just a harmony lent by heaven and earth. Your inborn nature and allotment of vitality are not your own possessions, they are just a compliance lent by heaven and earth. Your sons and grandsons are not your own possessions, they are just sheddings lent by heaven and earth. So in all our travels we can never really know where we are going, in all our dwellings we can never really know what is maintaining us, in all our eating we can never really know what we are tasting. This is all the doing of the bright and vigorous energy of heaven and earth. How could it be obtained and possessed? Confucius said to Lao Dan, you have some leisure today. I venture to ask about the perfect course. Loudon said, you must fast, rinse out your mind, cleanse your seminal spirit until it gleams like snow, and smash your understanding to bits. Indeed, the course is profound, difficult to describe. Nonetheless, I will tell you a few outlying generalities about it. The bright is born from the dark, and the determinable is born from the formless. The seminal kernel of vitality and the spirit are born from the course. It is from this seminal kernel that the physical body is originally born. All things generate and give form to one another. Those with 9 holes in them are born from a womb, those with 8 are born from an egg. Before they come there is no trace of them, and after they depart they are bound by no limits, traversing no gate and dwelling in no chamber, positioned only in the full-flung vastness of the 4 directions. He who accords with this is strong in body, unobstructed in thinking, keen of hearing and seeing. He makes no efforts in the use of his mind, responding to things with no fixed method. Heaven cannot help but be high, earth cannot help but be broad, the sun and moon cannot but proceed on their ways, all things cannot but arise and flourish. Is this not their course? Learning does not necessarily make one knowledgeable, and skill in debate does not necessarily make one wise. This is why the sage eliminates them. But what the sage holds onto is what is not increased when one tries to increase it, and not diminished when one tries to diminish it. So deep and unfathomable, like the ocean. So lofty and towering, it ends and then begins again. It turns forth and measures out the 10,000 things without ever running dry. So can your course of the exemplary man be outside of it? The 10,000 things depend on it to go their own ways without ever exhausting it. Is it not their course? This middle kingdom is populated with human beings, but such creatures are ultimately neither yin nor yang. For they dwell between heaven and earth only temporarily, assuming the form of a human being, always just on the verge of returning to their source. From the point of view of its root, life is just a temporarily congealed thing. Although some are long-lived and some die young, how much of a difference is there really? It's all a matter of no more than a single instant. What room is there for the rightness of Yao and the wrongness of Jia? Every fruition has its own coherence. Although humans encounter difficulties in their interactions with one another, this is precisely how they are able to interlock. The sage meets them without rebelling, lets them pass without holding on to them. To respond to them by harmonizing with them is the work of virtuosity, but to respond to them as a matter of pure happenstance is the work of the Course itself. This is what enables emperors to flourish and kings to arise. Man's life between heaven and earth is like a white stallion galloping past a crack in a wall, just a sudden whoosh, and then it is all over. Pouring and surging forth this way and that, everything emerges, slipping and sinking away, everything is submerged again. One transformation and you are alive, another and you're dead. Living creatures lament it and human beings bemoan it. But this is just the unfastening of the heavenly bow sheath and the dropping away of the heavenly scabbard, the twisting and turning in the chaos until your vital spirits are ready to scatter away, and then your body, hence, the great return. The formless takes on a form, the formed veers back to the formless. This is something everyone knows and need not be managed in any way when it is about to happen. It is something everyone has a theory about, but when it arrives there is no more theorizing, and when there is theorizing that means it has not yet arrived. When it is seen clearly, that just means it has not really been encountered, so debate about it is no match for silence. The Course cannot be learned, so hearing about it is no match for plugging up your ears. This is called the Great Attainment. Dongguozi asked Zhuangzi, "Where's this Course you speak of?" Zhuangzi said, "There is nowhere it is not." "You must be more specific." "It is in the ants and crickets." "So low?" "It is in the grasses and weeds." "Even lower?" "It is in the tiles and shards." "So extreme?" "It is in the piss and shit." Dongguozi made no reply. Zhuangzi continued, "Truly, your question misses the substance of the matter. When a shopper asks a meat inspector to test how fat a hog is, the lower on the animal he checks, the more revealing the results. Just free yourself of foregone conclusions and don't run away from any particular thing. That's what the perfect Course does, and the same is true of great words. The ubiquitous, the all-pervasive, the omnipresent, these are three terms with the same meaning. They all point to the same thing. Let us try to wander together in the palace of not even anything, merging it together into one single assertion that is nowhere brought to a halt. Let's try doing nothing together, shall we? Flavorless and unmoving, blurred yet unmuddied, blended yet in between. Having emptied my will, I have no destination, no idea where I am. Coming and going, I know not where I come to rest. I come and I go in it, never knowing where it all ends. Soaring through the vastness, the great understanding enters into me, never understanding where it is brought to a halt. That which makes beings beings is not separated from beings by any border. So the borders that the beings themselves take on, these are merely borders from the side of the beings. The borders that do no bordering, the borderlessness that nonetheless borders, this is what fills and empties beings, what decays and kills them. That which fills and empties them is not filled or emptied. That which decays and empties them is not decayed or emptied. That which roots and branches them is neither rooted nor branched. That which congeals and scatters them is neither congealed nor scattered. Kuhegen and Shenong were both students under old Dragon Ji. Shenong had shut the door for an afternoon nap on his desk when Kuhegen came bursting in and said, "The old dragon is dead." Shenong pulled himself up from the desk with his staff, and then clanging the staff down to the ground he laughed and said, "The Heavenly One knew I was a vulgar, lazy fool, so he died and abandoned me. It is all over. The master died without even leaving some crazy words to set me off with." Yin Gang, having come to pay his respects, heard this and said, "All the exemplary men of the world seek to bind themselves closely to a man who has embodied the Course. Now, what this one had attained of the Course was not even 1/10,000th of an autumn hair, but even he knew enough to take his crazy words to the grave with him. How much more so one who has truly embodied the Course? Looking for it one finds no form, and listening one hears no sound. When people try to describe it, they can only say it is a darkness and obscurity. This is merely how the Course is described, it is not the Course itself. This is why, when Great Clarity asked Endless, "Do you know the Course?" Endless said, "I do not know." But when he asked the same question to Non-Doing, he was told, "I know the Course." Is your knowledge of the Course specifiable? It is. May I ask its specifications? I know that the course can be lofty or it can be base, it can be a constraint or it can be a scattering. These are the specifications by which I know the course. Great Clarity reported this to Beginningless, saying, so between endless not knowing and non-doing's knowing, which is right and which is wrong? Beginningless said, not knowing is profound, knowing is shallow. Not knowing is internal, knowing is external. At this, Great Clarity was provoked to let out a sigh. Not knowing is knowing. Knowing is not knowing. Who knows the knowing of non-knowing? Beginningless said, the course cannot be heard, whatever is heard is not it. The course cannot be seen, whatever is seen is not it. The course cannot be spoken, whatever is spoken is not it. Know that what forms has no form. The course corresponds to no name. He continued, if someone answers when asked about the course, he does not know the course. Though one may ask about the course, this does not mean one has heard of the course. The course is unsusceptible to questions, and any questions about it have no answers. To ask after it by asking no questions is to be through with all questions. To answer by giving no answers is to be free from all opinions harbored within. And to confront the ending of all questions with nothing harbored within, such a one externally sees no time and space and internally is without knowledge of any primordial beginning and thus has no need to pass beyond the Kundan mountains or to wander in the great void. Radiance asked nothingness, do you exist or do you not exist? He got no answer and could see no countenance there, just a darkness and emptiness. Ceaselessly gazing after him, listening for him, groping for him, he could find nothing to see, nothing to hear, nothing to take hold of. Radiance said, perfection. Who can reach such a state? I can reach the state of there being nothingness, but not of there being no nothingness. Reaching it, nothingness becomes being. How can such a state be arrived at? The Grand Marshal had in his employ an old man of 80 who was still forging harness buckles without the slightest error. The Grand Marshal asked him, are you just skillful, or do you have the course? He said, I have that which I hold to. Since the age of 20, I took a delight only in making harness buckles. From then on, I neglected all other things, noticing nothing besides harness buckles. Thus, what one can make real use of depends on what one has no use for. Usefulness grows from having no use for certain things. How much more is this the case for that which makes use of all things? What being fails to find support in it? Rancho asked Confucius, can the state before there was heaven and earth be known? Confucius said yes. The past is like the present. Rancho had no more questions and withdrew, but he returned the next day and said, yesterday I asked you if the state before there was heaven and earth could be known, and you said it could, that the past was like the present. At the time this was crystal clear, but now it makes no sense to me anymore. May I ask what this means? Confucius said, your clarity yesterday came from your spirit's initial reception. Your present confusion is because you are now seeking it with something other than your spirit, is it not? No past, no present, no beginning, no end. Before you have descendants, you have descendants. Do you get it? Rancho could not answer. Confucius continued, it is enough that you cannot answer. It is not life that produces death, and it is not death that brings an end to life. For do life and death depend on something else? Both are parts of the same body, which confers on them their unity. If there is something before heaven and earth, could it be any specifiable being? What makes beings beings is no being, for as soon as a being has appeared, it is no longer before all beings. It may seem as if there is something there, but the somethingness can only be nothingness. The sage's selfless love for all people is rooted in this. Yin Yuan asked Confucius, I have heard you say, dismissing none, welcoming none. May I ask how to roam in such a way? Confucius said, the men of olden times changed externally, but not internally. Nowadays, people change internally but not externally. That which transforms along with things is the soul unchanging. Securely at peace in things whether they change or not, securely at peace even in dispersing along with them, it finds its necessity in never exceeding them in the slightest. That clansman of Shiwei roamed in his park, the yellow emperor in his garden, that Mr. Yoyu in his palace, and emperors Tang and Wu merely in their own chambers. These were initially exemplary men, but then they took Confucians and Mahists for their teachers and thus wore themselves down with right and wrong. And how much more is this so for the men of the present age? The sage dwells among things without harming them. Because he doesn't harm them, they cannot harm him either. Because there is no harm either way, he can both welcome and dismiss others. The mountain forests, the great open plains, shall they make me joyful? Shall they fill me with happiness? But even before my joy is done, sorrow has come to take its place. When joy and sorrow come, I cannot stop them from coming, and when they go, I cannot keep them from going. How sad it is! In being merely some specific being, every person in the world is nothing but a temporary lodging house. Indeed, they understand what they encounter, but not what is never encountered. They understand what to do about that which something can be done about, but they don't understand what to do about that which nothing can be done about. It is impossible to escape from having something you do not understand and something that nothing can be done about. Is it not tragic to try to escape from what cannot be escaped? Perfect words eliminate all words. Perfect action eliminates all action. But merely to put what your understanding understands into some kind of order, that is just shallowness.